Hello and welcome back to the AWS Lambda series. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can send data to your Lambda function through AWS API Gateway using GET and POST requests. I'm going to be using Postman to test our API, but you're free to use any API testing tool that you're comfortable with. If you don't have Postman installed, you can check out the link in the description below of how to set up Postman on your PC. Let's just go back to our Lambda function where you see that it is static. As you can see here, it will always return the addition of 10 and 20, which is 30. This is a no good calculator, so to change that, we're going to be sending data in the form of two numbers to operate on, as well as the operator, and the Lambda should give us the correct result. For instance, if I send 10, 10 and add, it should return to me 20. If I send 10, 2 and divide as the operator, it should return to me 5. We are going to be using GET and POST requests. For the GET request, we are going to use query string parameters, and for the POST request, we are going to use request body parameters. In this section, we will go over the GET request. By default, the request created for us by AWS is an any request because our Lambda is in Lambda proxy mode. You're going to understand what this means shortly. We did test it with the browser and it was working. That is, hitting the endpoint will bring us the result 30. So if I just scroll up and then click on API Gateway, grab the endpoint and open it in a new tab, I should get the result of 30. As you can see, it returns to me 30, which means that it is working. Now we have to do the same thing with Postman. So we're going to open up Postman and create a GET request to our API Gateway. So just open up Postman, and the first thing that we're going to do is create a collection. So I'm just going to click here on New Collection, and then I'm going to give the collection a name. I'm going to call it AWS Lambda series. A collection is just basically a fancy word for a folder. It basically groups together related requests under one folder. So we want all the requests pertaining to our API Gateway to be under this collection. You can give it a description if you want, but I'm not going to do that. And then click on Create to create the collection. As you can see, we now have a collection, but it says 0 requests. To add requests to this collection, just select it and either click on Add Requests here, or you can click on these 3 dots and then select Add Requests. By default, the request that you add will be GET. You can then change it to POST or whatever it is that you want. So I'm just going to click here to add a request, and I'm just going to call this one GET request. I'm not going to give it a description, and then I'm just going to click Save to AWS Lambda series. As you can see, we now have one request which is a GET. If I select it here, it then comes up on this big pane here. As you can see here, it's a GET request, and here, that's where I'm supposed to put in the request URL. We just have to go back to our browser and copy the URL and paste it here. So we're going to copy this URL and then paste it here. That's all that we need to do for now. And then we're going to click Send to invoke our Lambda function. If everything works, we should get 30 back as the result and an HTTP 200 OK status code. So just click on Send. It's saying sending request. The request is back. As you can see, our result is 30, which is fine. And here, the status code is 200 OK. So this basically verifies that our Lambda function is working and we can invoke it both in the browser as well as in Postman. The reason that we're using Postman is that it gives us more control over the requests that we'll be sending to our API Gateway to invoke our Lambda function. Since everything is working, we can now put in the query parameters. Query parameters appear after a question mark in the endpoint. The question mark followed by the parameters and their values is referred to as the query string. In the query string, each parameter and value is listed one after the other with an ampersand separating them. An example of an endpoint with query parameters is as follows. HTTPS myendpoint.com, first parameter is equals to 1, second parameter is equals to 2. In this example, we have an endpoint which is called myendpoint.com, and the query string has 2 parameters, first parameter with value 1 and second parameter with value 2. The order of the parameters does not matter, so the following will behave the same as the above. HTTPS myendpoint.com, second parameter is equals to 2 and first parameter is equals to 1. This is because the service that is going to consume or process the request will get the parameters and values in the right way regardless of order. Now let's create our API GET request that will go to our Lambda function. We said we're going to send 2 operands and 1 operator, so our GET request should look like the following. HTTPS API endpoint question mark, first num equals to 10 and second num equals to 10 and operator equals to add. In this example, I am sending 10 and add, and our Lambda function should return 20. Now let's modify our GET request to include the query string I've just shown you. So you just come up here, put question mark, and then first num equals 10 and second num equals 10, and operator equals add. As you can see, the beauty of Postman just shows you the query parameters here. As you can see, I've put in first num, second num, and operator. So it means instead of typing here, I could have just typed here. For example, if I'm gonna just type in a test, and then the value is test, you can see above here, it's created for me that new parameter. But we're not going to be using this one, so you can just delete it. With that, our GET request is done. We are sending 3 parameters, first num, second num, and operator to our Lambda function. But if we invoke it, we're still going to get 30. This is because we have not yet modified our Lambda function to use these parameters. To prove this, I'm just going to click send here and look at the result. As you can see, it still returned to me 30. But before we go and modify our Lambda function to cater for our GET request parameters, let's just create a POST request. This is so that when we modify our Lambda function, it will cater for both the GET request parameters and the POST request parameters. So the first thing that I'm going to do is copy our API gateway endpoint, excluding the parameters. So I'm going to copy everything before the question mark. After that, I need to create a POST request on our collections AWS Lambda series. So just go to our collections over there and click on these 3 dots, select add a request. It will ask you for details about that request. So the request name, I'm going to give it post. I'm not going to give it a description, and I'm going to confirm that it's going to be added to AWS Lambda series, and then I'm going to click on save to AWS Lambda series. This will create by default a GET request on our AWS Lambda series collection. As you can see here, we now have 2 requests. So I'm just going to click here to expand it and click on the one called post. By default, it creates a GET request. So I'm just going to click on the drop down here and select post. This is a list of all the HTTP requests that you can send. So just select post here. And here, we're going to paste the API gateway endpoint. Since this is a post request, we are not going to set up a query string. Instead, we're going to send our parameters through a request body. So just select body here, and then select row on the options. The request body that we're going to send will be in the JSON format, and JSON is key value pair, and it will have the same parameters as the GET request, that is first num, second num, and operator. But before I write the JSON string with our parameters, I need to tell this request that you're not going to be sending text, but actually JSON. So if you come here where it's saying text, just click on the drop down and then select JSON. After you select JSON, if you come to headers, you see that it has added this header type that's saying content type application JSON. This essentially means that we are sending JSON with this request, and the JSON will be our request body with our parameters. Now let's go back to body and write our JSON string. So I'm going to start with the opening and closing curly brackets, and inside there I'm going to put my parameters. I'm going to start with first num, and I'm going to give it a value 10. And then because I've got another parameter coming, I put a comma, and then the next one is second num, and then I also give it a value of 10. I've got our last parameter, so I have to put in a comma, and the last parameter is called operator. I'm actually thinking right now maybe we should have called it operation, but anyway, to keep it consistent, I'm still going to call it operator, and then our operator is going to be add. Because there is no other parameter coming through, I don't put in a comma. If you were to put in a comma, it would complain. Hence, it will tell you that this is a bad JSON string. So just remove the comma, and then that's fine. With this, our post request is done. What I just need to do is test it to make sure that our Lambda function is still functioning well. So I do that by clicking on send, and we should get 30 back because, like I said before, our Lambda function is not yet using these parameters. So I'm going to click on send, and I expect 30 back in the response. As you can see, I got 30 back in the response. This is fine. Now let's move on to API Gateway Console. I just want to show you a few things, and then we'll go back to our Lambda function and modify it to use these parameters. So from our Lambda function, just click on Services and select API Gateway, where you should see a list of APIs. As you can see, I've only got one API. Just remember that API Gateway is region specific. So if you change the region, say to Ohio, you should see that I don't have any APIs. We're now in the Ohio region, and you can see that I don't have any APIs here. Go back to Ireland and select our API by clicking it. Just select here and then select Ireland. When it opens up, just click on our API, which is Calc API. When it opens up, you can see that the method here is any. This means that our API gateway will accept any valid HTTP request method, that is get, post, put, etc., and it will submit it to our Lambda function. If you click on it, you see that the integration request is Lambda proxy. Lambda proxy allows you to change the Lambda function implementation at any time without needing to redeploy the API. This means that I can just change my Lambda function. I don't need to come back to API gateway to update it. It also means that on my Lambda function, like I explained in the previous video, you need to have status code as well as the body in JSON returned to API gateway. At runtime, API gateway will map the incoming request into the input event parameter of the Lambda function. The input includes the request method, path, headers, any query string parameters, any payload, which will be a JSON string, and other items. Here's the full API gateway Lambda input format. I've also put a link to it in the description below. As you can see, it has the items mentioned above. That is, we have path, HTTP method, headers, query string parameters, stage variables, path parameters, as well as the body. We're going to use it to create a test payload for our Lambda function. So just copy it and let's go back to our Lambda function and modify it to handle the get and post requests with parameters. So just click on services and then select Lambda. When it opens up, select our Lambda function, which is calc. The first thing that we need to do is create the get request and post request test payloads. Click on the drop down besides test and select configure test events. And then I want to create a new test event, so I'm going to make sure that is the one that is selected. On my event name, I'm going to call it get request event. It doesn't matter which event template you choose because we're going to overwrite it. So I'm going to leave my test event there, it's fine. So just select it all and then paste what we copied there and then click on create. We have successfully created it. That's why it's now showing besides test. We now need to do the same for the post request. So the procedure is the same. Click the drop down, select configure test event, create a new test event here, give it the name post request event. I don't need to paste because I was going to paste the same thing and then just click on create. It was successful. That's why we can see it now being displayed besides test. So we've just pasted that template on our test events. Now we need to modify it so that it reflects what's actually going to be sent through when it's a get request or when it's a post request. We're going to start with the get request first. So just select the drop down besides test and select configure test events. And then on the saved test event, select get request because that's the one we're going to start with first. So just change the following resource. Here we'll put the name of our Lambda function, which is /calc. And then on the path, it's the same thing. If you have a different path in your API gateway, you need to put that path. But my path is /calc again. To verify this, if you open Postman, and then you see here, this is the path, /calc. So whatever it is for you, that's the one that you need to put. And then on the HTTP method, we know this is a get request. So it's get. On the headers, we're not sending any headers. So you can either send back now, which is like this, or you can just delete it. I prefer deleting because it makes it clearer to read. So I'm going to delete that. I'm not going to send multi-value headers again. So I'm going to delete them. Query string parameters. Yes, this is a get request and I'm definitely going to have query string parameters. So they'll be in the format of a JSON string. So I just need to remove that and then remove that as well. And then inside there, I'm going to put in first num, which is my first parameter, and the value is 10. Notice here I'm sending the values as strings because they're in the query string parameters. I put a comma and then I need to put in the next one, which is second num, and the value is 10 as well. Put a comma and then the last parameter. Okay, this is not a 0, it's actually an O. Fix that. Operator. and the value is add. The rest of these guys, I can delete them because I'm not sending them. There's no need for a comma there because there's no longer any parameters coming. With that, we have fixed our get request event, and this is the one that we're going to send to our Lambda function. Just click on save to save it. Now we need to modify the post request event. So just click on the drop down here, select configure test events, and here select post request event because that's the one that we want to modify. Change the resource to /calc again, as well as the path to /calc. The HTTP method is post, and we're not sending any headers, multi-value headers, query string parameters, multi-value query string parameters, path parameters, stage variables, request context. So I'm going to delete that. On the body, we need to send a JSON string of the request payload. So remember, our request payload is JSON, but we need to send a JSON string of that JSON request. Don't worry, I've already done it for you and it's in the description below. So just copy it and paste it here where it's saying body. We just need to fix the indentation and then delete is base64 encoded because we are not using it. Click on save to save it. With that, we have our request ready and we will now modify our Lambda function to process these parameters. Now let's go to our Lambda code where we're going to start off with just printing the event parameter to see what our request is bringing in. So we just write print event and then click on save. Remember, every time you make a change to a Lambda function, you need to hit save. Now let's test this modification to our Lambda function first through the get request event, which is already selected here. So I'm just going to click test. I'm going to expect to see our test payload in the logs. So I'm just going to click on test here. As you can see, the status is succeeded. And here in the logs, we do have our test payload. The HTTP method is get and the query string parameters are there. Let's just change it to the post request event and see if we get the HTTP method as post, and instead of query string parameters, we need to have a body there. So I'm going to change it here to post request event, click on test, and then as you can see, we now have HTTP method post and we have a body instead of query string parameters, and the status is succeeded. You can also scroll up, expand details on the execution results, and you see the same thing. Our Lambda successfully executed and showed our test payloads in the logs. Next, we need to set defaults. So we're going to set first num and second num to 0, and then create an operator variable which we'll set to add, and then we'll make them global. This means that they will not be under any method. So just close this, then go to my Lambda outside the def Lambda event handler, because this is a method. I'm just going to go out there, and then first num, I'll set it to 0, and then second num, I'll set it to 0 again, and then operator, I'll set it to add. This Lambda handles both the get and post requests, so we need to make a selection. This is because for a get request, the data is in the query string, and for a post request, the data is in the body. So inside our def Lambda handler method, after we print the event, we need to make a selection. The selection is based off the HTTP method. So we're going to create a variable HTTP method with an empty value. So HTTP method is equals to empty. Then we're going to do an if statement based off this HTTP method variable to provide the different processing for the two methods we currently support. So if HTTP method is equals to get, then do something. Elif HTTP method is equals to post, then do something. The event parameter comes in as a dictionary, so we have to use the bracket notation to access the elements. So to get the HTTP method, we will use event bracket HTTP method inside quotes. You put the name of the element you want inside the single or double quotes within the brackets. So to actually get the HTTP method from our event, instead of setting it to empty there, we'll set it to is equals to event, then bracket, and then quotes, And then inside the brackets, we're going to put HTTP method. This will get the HTTP method based on the request. So if it's a GET request, it will get GET. And if it's a POST request, it will get POST. Let's just save and then get the parameters. Inside the GET block, we're going to get the query string parameters and assign them to our variables. We do that by using the bracket notation. So instead of pass, I'm going to say first num is assigned event bracket. The first thing that we get is the query string parameters. So it will be query string parameters. And then the first parameter that we get is the first num. I'm just going to copy this and change it for second num and operator. So this becomes second num. And then this becomes second num. This becomes operator. And this becomes operator. Inside the post block, we are going to get the request body, which is a string, and convert it to a dictionary so that we can access the elements and assign them to our variables. We do that by using the JSON loads function. So inside the post block, I'm going to write body is equals to JSON.loads. And then inside there, I'm going to pass in my event and then the body from the event. And then I'll just access the parameters in the body just like I did for the GET request. So it's going to be first num is equals to body bracket first num. I'm going to copy this and paste for the others. And I'll change this to second num. And this to operator. Change this to second num. And this to operator. And click on save to save our progress. Now that we can capture the values regardless of whether the request was a GET or POST, we now need to create a method which does the calculation. We're going to call this method calculate, and you take the first number, second number, and the operator, and then return the result of the calculation. So let's create our calculate method. I'm going to scroll down and then go to the first line, put a space there, and then say def calculate. We say it detects the first num, the second num, and the operator. Our calculator handles addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, so I need to put an if statement to handle the different operations. So for the first one, if operator is equals to add, then do something. Then I need to do for the next one, elif operator is equals to subtract, then do something. I'm just going to copy this one and use it for multiplication and division. So change this one to multiply and this one to divide. We say this method does the calculation and returns the result, so I need to create a result with the default value of 0. Result is equals to 0. So whenever you get 0, you have to know it's either the default or the calculation was 0. And then here at the end, we say return result. For add, we are just going to add the two numbers. So I'll change this to result is equals to first num plus second num. For subtract, we're just going to subtract the two numbers. So this is going to be result is equals to first num minus second num. For multiply, we are just going to multiply the two numbers. So this becomes result is equals to first num multiplied by second num. For divide, we'll first have to check if the second number is a 0, as we know that you can't divide by 0. If not, then we can divide the two numbers. So inside divide, we do an if statement to check. So if second num is not equal to 0, then we can do the division. Result is equals to first num divided by second num. Our calculate method is done. Now we need to call it in the Lambda handler method return statement on the body line. So come here, this is the body line. Instead of returning the result there, I'm going to return calculate and then pass in the first num, the second num, and the operator. And then I'm going to delete these because I no longer need them. Now click on save to save the Lambda. And then select the get request event here. After we click test, we should get 20 as the result in the body. So just click on test here. So we didn't get 20 in the result body, and the status here is saying failed. So the response is actually a syntax error in Lambda function, invalid syntax, okay? And then in the stack trace, that's where you find the line number. So line 32. So if we come here to our Lambda function on line 32, what's happening there? We want to do an equality test, but instead we're assigning subtract to operator. So we just need to put another equal sign here. And then I think that's the same mistake on line 34 and on line 36 as well. And then click on save to save the Lambda. And then click on test. We got 1010. What does that mean? This means that our parameters are coming through as strings and we need to convert them to integers, because if you add two strings together, they're just concatenated, and that's not what we want. We want our Lambda function to actually do an operation on our parameters. So what I just need to do is cast the strings to integers. So just come here and then just say, okay, first num int, and then put brackets there. Essentially what I'm doing is everything that comes through will be converted to an integer. And then I do the same for this one. And then click on save. And then test. As you can see, I'm now getting 20 in the body. Now let me just select the post request event. And then click on test. I should also get 20 as the result in the body. We can now use Postman to test if everything is working as expected. So just go back to Postman. And you can start with either the get or post request. I'm going to start with the get request, and I'm going to change the parameters as follows. For the first number, I'm going to change it from 10 to 50. For the second number, I'm going to leave it as 10, but for the operator, I'm going to change it from add to divide. I should get 5 back as the result. Click on send. As you can see, I got 5 back as the result. Let me go to the post request and also test it. So on the post request, you go to your body, and then on the first num, I want to change it to 30. On the second number, I want to change it to 30 again. And on the operator, I'm going to change add to multiply. Click on send to invoke our Lambda function. And as you can see, I got 900 back, which is the multiplication of 30 and 30. Our Calc API is now doing calculations, and we managed to send data to our Lambda function through get and post requests. Thank you for watching, guys. Please subscribe to support the channel if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one.